watch my first viewing of Bad Batch. I just watch it plain and pure. No subtitles, no descriptive track, nothing like that. I just soak it in. Then the next time I watch it, I'm taking notes. I got the descriptive track on. I got the subtitles on. And so I'm like, what are those weird creatures there? And so I started looking at these weird creatures on the screen, and the descriptive audio track refers to these creatures on the planet Kashyyyk, the Kinrath, the Kinrath. And I'm like, boy, I swear to God, we saw those somewhere before. So Googling Kinrath. And then that takes me down a whole rabbit hole where it leads me to a panel from 2015 at the Star Wars convention in Anaheim, 2015, Untold Clone Wars, right? And Jason, we couldn't see this because you and me were hosting one of the main stages for that whole week. So we were stuck on that stage and really didn't get to experience the convention itself. And we missed some great panels. So thankfully, they put some complete panels onto YouTube. This is one of them. It's called Untold Clone Wars. And they describe all of these story arcs and ideas and concepts that they were developing for Clone Wars at the time it was canceled. So it was really a very revealing panel. And in that panel, there's concept art shown of Wookiees and some of those beasts that we see on Kashyyyk in this new episode of Bad Batch Tribe. This stuff has been revealed as dating back at least a decade or more as far as the concept goes, because the Bad Batch were originally supposed to be introduced in the Clone Wars. I mean, I know they were introduced in the Clone Wars in that final season, but it was going to be vastly different. The rollout for the Bad Batch would have been on Kashyyyk, and on Kashyyyk, the Separatists would have been invading the planet, and the Bad Batch were there to help the Wookiee warriors fight back the Separatists' invasion. Yeah. And they would face, these creatures. The Kinrath would be there, and those other creatures with those big mouse ears.
Yeah, the mouse-eared things that the Wookiees are riding around on.
Right. So all of this gets talked about in a panel from 8 years ago, and these are concepts that were in development maybe even a dozen years ago, well before the sale of Star Wars to Disney. So I pulled some highlights from that panel just because we didn't really have time to sit there and listen to this audio during the after show. I thought I would highlight some of them and play them here on RFR. So the first one is Dave Filoni, circa 2015, talking about the Bad Batch. And he's talking about the Bad Batch, this is 5.5 years before we actually see them then appear on screen in that final season of Clone Wars. Well, Filoni was talking about it back in 2015 in the Untold Clone Wars panel, and here he is describing how the origin of the Bad Batch goes back to George Lucas ideas.
George wanted to explore the idea that there were clones that had kind of, at creation, at birth, specialized traits. And after the Clone 99 incident at the beginning of that, Rookies, the previous episode, that the Kaminoans and the Republic had decided not to kind of dispose of some aberrations like 99, but to actually impose further mutation on them to create genetic super soldiers, kind of. So the Bad Batch were the expression of these elite squad super soldiers, and the writers, especially Matt Miknovitz, got very into the Bad Batch. Was his favorite, so much so that I keep forgetting that he didn't write the first arc. It was Brent Friedman, which was rather shocking to me because Matt talks about Bad Batch all the time. It's all he talks about. We'll be in Rebels. He talks about Bad Batch all the time.
Yeah, you were even saying earlier this week, that Matt Miknovitz he's the Bad Batch guy, and he is the story editor on the series, which is great, and wrote this past week's episode.
Mm-hmm. So he was probably one of the guys behind the scenes really pushing the idea of bringing the Bad Batch back, or even bringing the Clone Wars back, responding to our hashtag Save the Clone Wars, which we were the first ever to tweet back in 2013. In another clip, Filoni refers to the canceled Kashyyyk arc from the Clone Wars, and he shows a picture of Tarful communicating with the trees in a very similar way in which we see Gungi and Omega doing in this new episode of Bad Batch Tribe. Again, ideas going way, way back. So here's Filoni talking about the canceled Kashyyyk arc, talking about how it was Tarful who was there communicating with the trees, and the conflict with the Separatists.
Tarful basically was asking permission of the forest to kind of go into battle and do some things that were rather challenging. And a bigger portion of the story arc, it was a Trandoshan leader was working for the Separatists, and basically they had an alliance with the Separatists to attack Kashyyyk, and in order to kind of get them out of the city of trees, the Wookiees were going to have to burn a portion of the forest. The clones had no problem doing this because strategically it made sense, but it was very upsetting to the Wookiees. So you had kind of a push and pull dynamic between the Wookiees and the clones where they didn't really get along, but they were trying to find a common purpose in fighting the Separatists.
You see, that's just why the Wookiees can't be Jedi. Can't make the tough decisions. Can't make the tough calls.
Well, I mean,
down the forest.
it was the clone troopers making the tough decisions, not the Jedi. And the Wookiees, you know,
I mean, the Jedi were there. I mean, they're the generals of the clone troopers.
Yeah, but they may have been sympathetic to the Wookiees' cause because the Jedi's
always on the fence.
The Jedi are fueled by compassion. And they would be compassionate to the Wookiees because the Wookiees have this symbiotic relationship with the trees, man.
Yeah.
And so there's Tarful, and he's there on his knee with the head bowed to the tree, staring at the trunk of the thing, waiting for it to start talking to him like he's in the, Emerald City of Oz there, skipping down the yellow brick road.
I looked at it,
hey, how'd you like it if somebody picked something off of you?
That's what I love that tree. I love that guy. Yeah. He's the best. I love that. I looked at it like almost like the Wailing Wall, over in Israel. You have the folks of the Jewish faith as they go and they do the Wailing Wall. That's kind of what it looked like to me in the episode Tribe, where they were all lined up doing it. And it was, of course, really sweet at the end of the episode when you saw Gungi and Omega doing it and going through that ritual. And I like this idea of Omega sort of on this quest to find herself, and in the quest to find herself, she's experimenting with these other cultures and beliefs and faiths and all that. So I like that very much.
Yeah, pretty soon she'll be showing up at your doorstep, handing you a pamphlet and talking to you about the Hare Krishna. But I mean, that used to happen. That used to be a thing.
It did.
That used to happen in the 70s and 80s. It did happen. Your doorbell would ring, and somebody had a lecture for you in a pamphlet.
Right. They were either Jehovah's Witnesses, they were Mormons, or they were the Hare Krishnas.
Yeah. God bless them all. And God bless the trees. And it's more than just the Wailing Wall, because these trees, they do communicate. They do somehow, through some energy, they're able to impart wisdom and knowledge to the Wookiees. And even Gungi was all like, hey, the trees have a plan. You gotta get down with this.
Have a plan. Yeah.
It's funny, the trees were more communicative about their plan than Admiral Holdo was about hers in the Last Jedi. The trees.
You're saying that the trees were a little bit more conversant than Admiral Holdo.
They were more transparent.
Yeah, that's true.
So one last one. Those Wookiee mounts that we saw in the episode.
Yeah.
They were multicolored. They looked. Well, Jason's showing some concept art here. This is a Filoni sketch of what they initially looked like. I think they're a little more exaggerated in the Bad Batch. Yeah. Maybe the legs aren't as long and the ears are much larger, but they're sort of a cross between a monkey and a mouse in a way. And
like a lemur or something, maybe.
Yeah, I see that. And maybe Well, they weren't really talked about very much in the episode. They weren't even discussed at all. They weren't given a name.
No.
The Wookiees just showed up riding them.
Even in closed captions, you didn't get a name of the,
right. There was nothing.
Yeah.
So we just called them like the mouse-eared Wookiee mounts or giant mounts. But there's more of a story behind those guys. And again, coming from George Lucas. And Filoni talks a little bit about it back in 2015 at the Untold Clone Wars panel. And here's what he had to say.
George had this idea that the Wookiees knew these giant tree spirits. The Wookiees could kind of summon these giant tree gods and ride them, but it was a very kind of religious thing for them. They didn't like to do it. They didn't like to take them necessarily into battle. It was a kind of a benevolent way of looking at their existence with nature, really.
The tree gods. Okay, so maybe is that the name of them now? Is that what we got to call them?
Tree gods. As far as I'm concerned, they're the tree gods. It sounds a lot better than large mouse-eared Wookiee mount. Tree gods. They're the Kashyyyk tree gods.
Yeah, it is better than that. I agree. I agree. This is crazy. All the way back to 2015 at Celebration Anaheim.
Well, that's when these ideas were revealed.
Yeah.
That's when these ideas were revealed. But how long were they in development before then? Many years, actually.
Yeah.
Many years.
Well, George is notorious. Not that George is obviously working on this stuff now, but he was so hell-bent on keeping all kinds of ideas. He never threw anything away. All those maquettes, all those sketches, he never knew when something might bubble up and be useful again. And they're carrying on that legacy, it seems like.
George had this idea that the Wookiees...
Dave trying to butt in again.
he's like, yeah, I'll tell you something you already know. But that's good. It's good to see that the integrity of George Lucas's methods and his way of creating and maintaining content, even the stuff that didn't get used, is getting revisited. We talked about the McQuarrie art recently, about how ideas that were thrown away. They were, discarded by Lucas and McQuarrie. They are now finding fresh life in Star Wars projects everywhere, too. So that way we keep getting contributions from great talent that's long gone now. Guys like Ralph McQuarrie. They're still contributing to Star Wars. So that's really great to think about it.